to carry out the mission. Eileen O'Connor, CNN, Washington.
The United States military moving quickly to shore up domestic defenses in the U.S. About 35,000 reservists are expected to be called up for active duty as part of Operation Noble Eagle. The latest on that, let's go to Bob Franken. He's at the Pentagon. Bob.
And Jim, those reservists are still being determined, precisely which ones. The units have not been fully informed yet. Individuals are not being fully informed. This is a process that could take, we've been told, several days, even weeks. We do know that they're going to be used for what is called homeland defense. That is to say, they're going to be used domestically, mainly support roles as the United States military gears up. Of course, a gearing up that is centered in this building, damaged though it is. And we're now almost 5 days after the plane hit the side of the Pentagon, caving it in. And there's still the search for casualties that is going on there. You can see a live picture. The fire is long out, of course, but there is still the intense digging through the rubble and the shoring up of everything inside as the search for the victims goes on. And there have been 85 remains that have been taken out thus far, and the Pentagon ultimately says that there will be about 188 casualties. And that's a figure that moves around quite a bit, but by the time it is through, there will be 188 or so who were killed in the crash of that American Airlines plane into the spot you're seeing right now in the Pentagon, a spot that is going to take at least 2 years and well over $100 million to repair. Now, as for the people who, in fact, were killed, their friends and relatives, those who are missing, were allowed to come by yesterday and set up a memorial of flowers and balloons and spend some time with reflection. They were brought in by buses, obviously under heavy security, to have their moments of privacy. They've been at a nearby hotel for the most part getting counseling. They were accompanied by a heavy contingent of military supporters trying to make this as painless as possible. But of course, the pain here is as real as the pain anywhere in a building which has been badly damaged, but there seems to be a huge resolve now to recover in the building, recover and make plans for retaliation. Jim?
I just want to get a sense from you, if I can, Bob, about those plans for retaliation. And is there a sense of personal indignation, perhaps, on part of the military planners there at what's happened?
There is, as a matter of fact, exactly that, a sense of indignation. The military people here, of course, are people who want to use their wares. They want to use them effectively. There are many questions that come up about exactly what type of response one might see. Will it be a massive response, which, of course, the United States military would have the ability to do with its 2.5 million forces, about half of those reserves, by the way, or is it going to be something more surgical, some sort of missile strike, some sort of very, very precise airplane strike, or some sort of commando action by special forces or SEALs units or something like that. All of that's still being drawn up, options being drawn up. They will be discussed at the highest levels, of course, and we're told that a plan will be carried out.
All right, Bob Franken reporting to us there live from the Pentagon. Ralitza?
Jim, so many were lost last week. So many have yet to be found. New York said goodbye Saturday to 3 men with long ties to the fire department. Chief Peter Gansey, First Deputy Fire Commissioner William Feehan, and Chaplain Michael Judge. More than 300 New York firefighters were killed or remain missing in the Twin Towers collapse.
Today was a very solemn and difficult day in New York City with the 3 funerals that we had for Bill Feehan, for Pete Gansey, and for Father Judge. And unfortunately, it probably is an indication of what we're going to have to face in the future.
Sadness, goodbyes too in suburban Washington, where mourners remembered lawyer and conservative commentator Barbara Olson. Olson was on the hijacked jet that slammed into the Pentagon.
Barbara's spirit survives in each of us, just as the spirit of our great country lives on. She lives in our memories, now dampened by tears and made hazy by grief. But she's here, her ever-present high heels clicking across the floors of this cathedral and through all the passageways of our sentiments.
It has been nearly 5 days since the attacks against targets in the U.S. Despite the nonstop efforts by thousands of rescue workers, only 5 people have been pulled alive from the rubble of what was once the World Trade Center. With each passing day, hopes of finding more survivors are fading. Let's go to Gary Tuchman in New York for an update there. Gary, explain to us, if you can, a little bit about what is underground there beneath the World Trade Center that might lend some hope to the people who are still waiting for word of their loved ones.
Well, Jim, there are 6 levels underground. Each level is about 20 feet tall, so you're talking about 120 feet of area underneath the rubble. And that's why people here have thought that there's a possibility they could find lots of survivors. But as you said, so far, only 5 survivors. And another day is now dawning, and if anyone is alive under there, time is running short. It has been 5 days since terrorists commandeered 2 planes and smashed them into the World Trade Center buildings behind me, which were the 2 tallest buildings in New York City. Short time ago, a woman who lived 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center complex gave us some videotape she shot from her balcony just after this disaster happened. She said she was frozen while she was taking the video, but the close-up pictures of the World Trade Center tower is very compelling. You see people waving curtains and shirts and whatever they can to get the attention, and you can only wonder the absolute horrors these people were going through. It's very hard to look at these pictures. Hundreds of emergency workers are on the scene as we speak. They have been there ever since this happened on Tuesday. They are feverishly looking for survivors. None have been found over the last 3 days, 5 the first 2 days. 4,972 people are still missing. Late last night, a sight that was poignant and pitiful at the same time, a fire truck was found in the rubble. That gives you an idea of how deep this rubble is. At some point, it's 100 feet tall. It was actually pulled out by a tow truck. The fire truck was gray, it was crushed, it said on it, Ladder 18. There was no one inside of the fire truck, and one wonders what happened to the men and or women who came on that truck to the World Trade Center that day on Tuesday. This has truly been a week that has changed New York City and the United States forever. Jim, back to you.
Gary, let me talk a little bit more about the underground question there at the World Trade Center, why there might still be some hope. Now, some of those levels were where trains came into the World Trade Center to bring commuters into the lower Manhattan area. Have they been able to work inside any of those tunnels?
That's right. There's an elaborate setup underneath the World Trade Center. Not only was there the New York City subway under there, there was also the PATH train. PATH stands for Port Authority Trans-Hudson. It's the train that takes you from New Jersey into New York City. So you had those 2 train setups. You also had a shopping mall underground, so you had an elaborate area down there. And they have been able to get to some of the areas and they haven't seen anything. Other areas underground are flooded and they haven't been able to get to them. But they're still trying to dig through the top of the rubble to get down to those parts there to see if anyone is alive. But that's one question that everyone's asking. Why don't you just come through the subway stations and see what you can see? They have done that and they haven't seen anyone from that angle yet.
All right, Gary Tuchman there reporting to us live from Lower Manhattan. Relitza.
Jim, for thousands of families and friends searching for their missing loved ones, the Armory in the city has been the source of information as well as comfort. More than 3,000 people have been through the building's doors to register the missing. And let's go now to Michael Okwul, who is standing outside that building. Michael.
Relitza, New Yorkers are waking up to another morning to discover that, in fact, the nightmare is real yet again. And for us in the media, another day to talk to you about numbers and to also talk to you about individual stories that are worth telling. 4,900 people, or more than 4,900 people, buried under the twisted ash and the rubble of the Twin Towers, and tens of thousands of family members and who are connected to some of those people who are missing, hanging on to the slimmest hope and looking for some kind of, some measure of resolution. Many of them come here, many blocks north of Ground Zero, but the emotional Ground Zero, the Armory on Lexington and 26th Street, where they come and they fill out forms, where they talk to some of the workers here, and they provide identifiable traits of some of their loved ones, everything from the color of their eyes to recognizable scars to everything to the sort of nail polish that they like to use. Since Thursday, some 3,100 people have filed through those doors. And yesterday, the New York City Health Department announced the fact that a medical lab company called LabCorp was providing free DNA collections, which will enable the rescue workers to use that information and actually identify some of the bodies that are found. They're asked to provide everything from toothbrushes to hairbrushes to samples of saliva from some of the closest blood members of the family, any items that might have been used exclusively by some of those people who are missing. Earlier, I spoke to a young woman who is missing her stepsister.
Hope is still there, but it's dwindling fast. I keep hearing reports of bodies found, of, unidentified bodies, and every time I hear that, I say, oh my God, could she be one of those people? And my only thought is right now that I just hope that they find her herself to give us that closure if it gets to that point. I just hope that we can get that closure as a family and move on from there and mourn her together.
Relitza, this is the last day that this place will be used as a site for this sort of thing. It is moving across town to the west side, but if the spirit of New Yorkers continues to be the same as it has been all week, that area will be strewn in posters and pictures of many of the loved ones and those who are missing. You're going to hear the word closure for the next couple days, but for some of the people who have come to this site over the past couple days, their lives will not return to normalcy. Relitza.
Certainly, Michael, I cannot imagine how difficult and how much strength it would take from people to come to this armory and to bring a toothbrush, a hairbrush, to bring things that could possibly mean that their loved ones might need to be identified and that they might not be alive.
That is so true. In fact, I spoke to somebody. I asked her that very question. I said that must have been very difficult to actually look at her items and pick them up and have to bring them in. And she said, yeah, it was one of the most difficult things she had to do. And yet, you get the sense, and in fact, she gave me every indication that there's a collective strength that a lot of the family members are deriving from the collective spirit of the New Yorkers, and I dare say the rest of the country. They feel such great support. But even though many of them are actually losing hope that they will actually find life underneath the rubble, they continue to come.
Michael, thank you very much. Jim?
Well, the many human dimensions of Tuesday's terrorist attacks becoming evident as the days go by, as Michael was explaining there. On Saturday, New York said farewell to the chaplain of the city's firefighters. Richard Blystone has this report.
Surgery is going to keep news photographer David Handschuh away from some friends' funerals, but this one he wasn't going to miss. Because in the line of duty, he saw a lot of Father Mike Judge, the firefighters' chaplain, who was killed Tuesday while giving last rites to a fireman.
He would hold your hand and you would just feel good. He emanated some form of just positive goodwill that nobody else I've ever met could. By just touching you, by putting his hand on you and giving you a hug, you just floated away happy.
Many of those in the overflow crowd had narrow escapes that day. David Handschuh had two.
You hear the sound and then the building starts falling down in slow motion. And I'm a photographer. The initial reaction was to raise the camera and take a picture, but something up here said, just run. And in the 20 plus years I've been doing this, I've never once run from anything. But it probably saved my life. The wall of debris that came flying down just picked me up and threw me a block.
One leg shattered, the other torn up. Firemen pulled him to a delicatessen. Another photographer captured that moment, but it wasn't over.
When the second building collapsed, the facade of that building was blown in. We were trapped once again. Using their hands and tools and sheer strength and will, they push their way out.
For news photographers, cameramen, reporters, days like that are part of an unwritten contract with life. So too with soldiers, policemen, firemen, which doesn't make it much easier. But the thousands still missing downtown, they didn't sign up for this.
I'm so sorry that so many people lost their lives over this. It's not comprehensible. It's not right.
At the end, the photographer pulled out his camera. It may not make much of a picture.